Hello, listeners. It's Mallory Wilsey, Chief Producer of the Enrollify Network, and I want to tell you about another show on our podcast network that I think you'll love. Visionary Voices, the College President's Playbook, is an insightful podcast dedicated to the strategic minds leading today's higher ed institutions. Each episode brings a unique perspective from visionary and tech-forward college presidents, chancellors, and other high-level academic leaders, diving into the complexities and nuances of running a modern educational institution. This show is hosted by Dr. Brian Gross, Vice President for Enrollment Management and Athletics at Hartwick College, and is a valuable resource for current and aspiring leaders in academia, offering a playbook of visionary ideas and practical solutions for the ever-evolving landscape of higher ed. New episodes drop every other Wednesday, and you can subscribe to the show by visiting podcast.enrollify.org or just search Visionary Voices wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome to The Application, the go-to how-to podcast for higher education marketers. I'm your host, Allison Tercio, Assistant Vice President of Enrollment and Marketing at Siena College. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out, this podcast is packed with practical tips and actionable advice to help you elevate your marketing game. In each snackable episode, we bring in experts to share their insights and experience on the topics that matter most to you. Got a question or idea you'd like us to cover? Email team@enrollify.org or reach out to me on Twitter or LinkedIn. The Application is part of the Enrollify Podcast Network, and if you like this show, you'll definitely want to check out our other higher ed focused podcasts on admissions, tech, marketing, and more. They're packed with stories, ideas, and tools to help you be the best in your field. All right, it's time for the show. I am thrilled to welcome back Lewis Miller, partner at Electric Kite, to the show. We had a brief chat during the Engage Summit a couple weeks ago. Make sure to check out that bonus episode. But now we're diving deeper into the topic of owning your audience and the impact it can have on your marketing strategies. Lewis, welcome back.
Thanks, Allison. So happy to be here with you again.
So in our bonus episode, we talked a lot about the importance of brands owning their platforms and their own audiences. Can you expand on why this is crucial, especially for higher ed institutions?
Yeah, and I actually think it would be helpful to start by defining what I mean by owning your own platform. And so what I mean by that is where, as a brand, you have a direct channel of communication with your prospective student, where you are in complete control of the message, the frequency, the timing, and the format. So that can look like a lot of different things. Sometimes that is just investing in content on your own website where prospects are coming to visit on themselves. Sometimes it's email newsletters, it's podcasts, it can be videos. Sometimes it's direct mail or magazines. But there's not one way that brands have to go about that. But the important thing is that it allows you to have complete control over your message and how and when it's delivered. You aren't reliant on third-party algorithms, a technology that may change over time when new ownership comes in, but it allows you to have that relationship that exists between you and the student. So it's not a relationship that exists between the student and whatever social channel that they're on. It's actually, they're forming that bond with you as an institution. And the benefits of that are that, one, you learn so much more about what kind of content and messages works and resonate and what doesn't when you have that direct access. And the bond and relationship that's forged between the brand and your prospect is so much stronger there.
And what about, too, I think about the fact that a lot of us, especially working in enrollment marketing, we're starting with, if we're looking at a funnel strategy, we're starting with purchasing an audience from a third party, whether that be the College Board or ACT or Ancora or these various list providers. That's what we're starting with and oftentimes very reliant on. So what are some of the advantages to thinking about owning our platforms and our audiences versus that reliance from third parties?
Yeah. So I think over the long term, it's going to be much less expensive. There's a study from Oracle saying that over the long term, having a content-focused marketing strategy where you are owning that content, that relationship, you end up spending about 31% less over the lifetime of a campaign. So when you're purchasing, whether it's lists or you're running ads, even posting organically on social, like as soon as you stop, those impressions, that faucet just gets completely turned off. Whereas when you are building that content organically on your own channels, they can live on and still work to attract and convert students for years after their publication.
Yeah, it makes me think about how so many colleges have not been able to use TikTok anymore because of laws that have passed in their state, but maybe they had built up a really big audience on TikTok and it was actually even driving enrollment or driving interest in their school. And then that faucet, it's gone. It's just turned off. And so in a way, it's pretty risky to have all of your strategy built on other people's platforms.
That's right. And I'm not saying that you should not be posting on other people's platforms. I'm not saying that you should not be
just not be
running
reliant
ads
on it.
Yeah, exactly. There's certainly a role for that. But like doing this investment in your own channels and owning that relationships, it allows you to use that paid marketing budget much more effectively and give you more content that you can then use to amplify across those channels.
So who's doing this well? It doesn't need to be higher ed, but what are some of the best ways you've seen brands really own their own audience rather than being reliant on these third-party platforms or sources?
Yeah, I think Red Bull is the classic example. Of course, they're an energy drink that started, really investing in the extreme sports business through Formula One. And they started putting up race results after F1 races and soon expanded to other lifestyle content for people who enjoyed extreme sports. And their media business is called the Red Bulletin now, has become one of the biggest success stories in publishing, where now they're printing over 2 million magazines each month in different countries. And they aren't measuring their success by how many cans of Red Bull they sell, but they're building an audience of their target customers. And they have the ability to position themselves as a tastemaker in that space. And even Red Bull, their CMO has said they no longer even think of themselves as an energy drink company, but they think of themselves as a media company that happens to sell energy drinks, which is kind of in this, it's not that I think every school needs to think of themselves as a publishing company first, but you do need to think of yourself as a publishing company and making sure that you are creating content that is going to resonate within your target audience, and think about how you're publishing and creating things that are going to attract an audience, whether that is someone who ends up actually enrolling or not. But in the higher ed space, I kind of think of the Harvard Business Review. They've done the same thing, where it's creating content that is attractive to its target audience, and it bolsters Harvard's reputation as cultivating and sharpening the leading business minds of today.
One that comes to mind for me is HubSpot. HubSpot is
fantastic. Yes.
Really a CRM system, but they've almost become a media company that happens to have a customer relationship management solution, right? Because they put out so much content about marketing in terms of courses, in terms of blog content, podcasts. I mean, they really run the gamut. They've sort of developed into a media company as well.
100%. Yes. And if I can toot our horns too, like Element 451, they've done the same thing with the Enrollify network. In my agency, Electric Kite, we've started Volt as a higher ed magazine for the best place for people who are in higher ed marketing to come together and share their expertise on how they can grow and evolve higher ed. So kudos to us.
Yeah, definitely kudos. It's sort of the ultimate content marketing is really what we're talking about. But let's think this through a little bit more from the perspective of higher ed institution. How can we get that media company kind of mindset or a media brand mindset? Maybe it's even a storytelling brand mindset, because I still need to enroll students at the end of the day, right? I still need an audience that I can contact and get them to apply to Siena or whatever college I'm working at. So what are the types of ways we can do this in higher ed? What do you think?
Yeah. And the unfortunate news is that it's not easy. And I think tactically speaking, for this to work, schools really need to hone in on their brand and understand how your brand will be adding something unique to the conversation, how it can use whatever channel you're going to focus on to get people to know and understand what they want them to feel about their school, because students are looking for authenticity, as we know, and they can smell it when someone is faking it. So you need to have everyone who is involved in creating this content, as well as those who are involved in the actual product of the education, of the educating of students, to be on the same page around what it is that your brand is focused on. So that is hard for schools because you have to do a lot of things for a lot of different people, but aligning on a few key pillars of who you serve, what makes you distinct, and how that benefits those people is essential.
Well, let's tease one out. So what if the core thing that I really wanted to focus on for my school was career and career preparation? What are some of the ways you think that we could produce media company-like content around that idea that would get an audience, build up an audience for my school?
Mm-hmm. I'd certainly be looking at alumni outcomes, alumni stories. I'd be looking at what is the school doing to provide hands-on learning and get students prepared for graduation for this current job market, and a job market that is changing incredibly fast. Looking at days in the life of student interns, looking at the types of organizations that they are being placed at, the types of things that they're doing, how they're adding value to those companies, and started talking to those companies who have partnered with your school through those internship programs to see from their perspective the value that they're receiving from that partnership as well.
Yeah, I think that's a really good start. And I like the idea of honing in, staying focused, right? Because if we try to talk about all the topics we could possibly talk about, I feel like we're dividing our audience and we're not going to be able to sort of rally people around an idea or rally around something that they can connect our brand overall to. But I was also thinking about topics that might not be stories directly coming out of what's happening with your alumni or happening on your campus, but would appeal to a larger audience. So even if you're not interested in that college or university, perhaps you're coming across this content because you're interested in the topic. So maybe something like, what if there was a podcast that was about teaching for career preparation, or teaching liberal arts courses for career preparation, and you interview a bunch of faculty talking about how they do that in their classes, like history and religious studies and philosophy. And so how does that actually build up your career skills? So yeah, it's a little bit about what's happening in the classroom on your campus, but it's also just like a top of mind thing, people wondering about, do the liberal arts matter anymore? What do you think about that? Like sort of taking almost like a stance on a hot topic and owning content around it.
I love that. I love that idea. I love, because it is not only relevant to the student's need of will this huge investment that I'm taking actually pay off in terms of a job, but it's also timeless because it's talking about how you're preparing students for an evolving market, something that is not going to be the same 4 years from now. Technology is going to advance, what people need are going to advance. But it is thinking about the structural strategy of how you teach towards preparing students to be able to come out and be employable, which is fantastic.
And what kind of skills and experiences do we need as a marketing or communications team at a school to pull this off, right? Because we might have built up teams around some of these third-party platforms, right? And so our teams might almost like their work and skill set almost emphasizes how we can do that. You might have someone who's a performance marketer or paid marketer who uses Google and Meta and all of those to be able to run ads, right? Or you have a social media marketer who's using the social media platforms to be able to connect with our audiences. What are some of the skills that might be different that we need to think about if we're going to have this sort of media company mindset?
Yeah, well, I think at the outset, it is making sure everyone is aligned on what the content strategy is and what the brand is, understanding what are those core tent poles that you should be writing towards and writing around. And then I think it's storytelling, it's journalism, which is there are flavors of that happening across all of those channels that your team is already working with every single day. But it's a matter, and you're also learning really valuable insights and data about what is resonating with your audiences through those different channels as well, which can be applied back into this sort of organic homegrown content as well.
Hey there, it's Mallory, Chief Strategist of Enrollify. Higher ed is facing a leadership crisis. The demands on today's college and university leaders are skyrocketing, and talent is leaving the industry at an unprecedented rate. New leaders like you are emerging, but no one is getting the proper training to be successful. Well, Enrollify is here to change that. Our new course, Lessons in Leadership, taught by Dr. Carrie Phillips, will prepare you to be a confident, empathetic, and effective leader. From systems thinking to adaptive leadership, building culture to handling difficult decisions, this comprehensive online course is perfect for new and aspiring leaders. Don't wait. The course starts September 9th, and for a lucky group of 26 students, we have the option to add interactive sessions with Dr. Phillips for personalized guidance. Visit Enrollify.org to learn more.
Yeah, it's interesting because you definitely need to be able to analyze that data to understand if this is working or not, right? And also what topics or what kinds of content really resonate. What's interesting to me is perhaps you even refine your brand this way. So if you're trying out content around different topics, like we were just talking about career, but for instance, there might be something around specific science research that you're really building a lot of stories and content, video, podcasts, whatever the formats might be around, or there might be something about your values. There might be something of sustainability, say. Maybe that's something that's really important on your campus. So you have all of this content that's about sustainability and climate change and all of that. And it's not necessarily talking about your school, but it's leveraging things that are happening at your school to be part of the conversation around sustainability. So those are just some ideas. But as you're trying those things out, couldn't it kind of reverse engineer and you find out what aspects of your brand are resonating out there? And almost it could become a strategy for the whole institution, because you might see an opportunity in one area and it's like, okay, we need to add an academic program here. We need to add a graduate program on here, or we need to add high school in the college kind of program here. So we have an early funnel to it, but it's bigger perhaps than just putting out the content.
It totally is. And it's funny you mentioned that. We've recently, we were working with another college who was really focused on building out this content and campaigns around hands-on learning. And
that's another great topic. Yeah.
We started digging to find examples of this. And what we found was that some programs were really doing a lot and really empowering students, and others there just wasn't much underneath the surface at all. And so we came back and reported this, and to their credit, the school is going back and be like, okay, we need to go back and double down on these programs to really live out these values that we're saying that are core to our identity. We need to make sure that we're following through on that, and that students are having a consistent experience no matter what program they're going through. Yes, ideally, that is exactly what happens, because I've also been in other situations where marketing teams will say all these things, or if you dig too deeply, you'll be like, this isn't necessarily what is happening within the student experience. But yeah, as we talked about, in order to be authentic, there has to be that follow through.
Yeah, what I like about this is we could find the authenticity and also the clarity, because where there's clarity on your brand and what you stand for and who's part of your brand, I have to imagine that affects enrollment performance. Because when we understand something, it's where our next steps to engage are shorter, I would say, because we're not having to, learn as much. We come from a place of understanding, a stronger place of connection before we might even apply or before we make that first step or make that connection, which is always a better place to be in.
100%. Absolutely.
And on retention too, because when students have clarity on what your school stands for, they're going to self-select. And so you're going to have a better match rate almost, so that comes all the way through to retention. So we're really talking about if we can coalesce around something here and own content around these topics, there could be some good ROI. Now, you were talking about the cost savings on owning our own audience and owning our own platforms and strategizing our time and resources around the things that we own and control versus being too reliant on the third party. You were talking about the cost savings, but I actually think there might be a stronger return on investment as well.
Yes, absolutely. I 100% agree. I think, as you mentioned, people have a better sense of what it is that they're buying. They go in, if that experience aligns with what they thought they were getting, then yeah, they're going to be 100% much more likely to retain, stay enrolled, and through completion and graduation. Whereas if you think you're coming in and having to go with a hands-on learning experience, if that's what you think you're getting, and then you enroll and you're like, where are all these opportunities where I'm meant to be having these hands-on experiences? Then of course you're going to bounce out. You're going to be really frustrated.
Yeah, we all want people to better know our institutions from the get-go. So this is a really good way to help do that. But what are some of the biggest challenges, do you think, around making this happen? Shifting from third-party platforms and advertising and list purchasing to this idea of owning our own audience and our own platforms. Like, what are the big challenges?
Honestly, I think the biggest challenge is just knowing what your brand is and how to express that in a meaningful way to a teenager that will make them pay attention. You know, I've gone through this experience with a number of colleges and universities, and you ask one person what you think their college or university stands for, you'll get different answers from everybody. And finding those kind of tentpole messages and those pillars is a really hard thing to do. Something that you have like actual evidence that you can point to say, yes, we are making real impact in these 4 to 6 areas is pretty challenging.
So say we do that, we're able to get to, okay, here's our 4 chapters or our 4 themes or 5, however many it might be. And then are you saying, for instance, you start with the website and you have to basically now go in and align all the content on your website to make sure that you're really exemplifying those 4 or 5 themes. And that would be a place that you would start?
That is, yes. That would be the place I would start. Do a complete audit of all of the marketing materials from the website, view book, campus tours, any sorts of brochures, making sure that messaging is consistent throughout and that you are saying the exact same thing in similar ways throughout that experience, so that as the student is going through the application and enrollment process, they are crystal clear on what exactly it is that you stand for, and that the product and the actual education experience follows through on that.
So start with the things that you already have. I brought up website because all of us have that. Like, that's a given, right?
Right.
But then to really even start to build out your audience more, then you might go the route of, okay, I'm going to start producing a newsletter around the topic of sustainability, or I'm going to launch a podcast around the topic of hands-on learning and that approach to higher education. You know, so there's all these other like media opportunities basically to start producing content around what those themes come out as.
Yes, absolutely. And I think you don't have to go all in on all of those channels, but yeah, I agree. I think there are interesting things to be done through podcasts, I think there's a lot. Blogging is obviously one of the older channels, and there's a lot of good examples of schools doing that really well and in interesting ways. And I'm also a big proponent of print. I think print is going to come back. So I think there's some really interesting things that can be leveraged across the print channel as well. But I think it's a matter of knowing your audience, knowing where you want to make that investment and where you can stand out. Yeah, and being bold and making a statement there.
Yeah, I think a question people really need to grapple with is, do people want to learn more about my college, or do they want to learn more about a topic like sustainability, as an example, right? There's way more people who want to learn about the second thing than the first thing. So how can we leverage becoming a voice in an area? And then that gets our brand out and helps it build an audience for our college or university. That's what we really have to switch a mindset with here, I think, because I think our natural inclination is to just tell our story, tell more people, get in front of more people, tell them about our name and what we stand for and that kind of thing. Whereas that audience is smaller. The people willing to listen to us on that is way smaller than the kind that we're talking about if we're going to produce sort of that media mindset kind of content around. There's way more people willing to learn about those broader topics that we can contribute to than our school.
Yes, absolutely. You're right. It's a great way of, how do you balance that the focus versus those opportunities to be discovered by new audiences as well.
And then at the same time, I've always said that the smartest thing I could probably spend my marketing budget on would be to produce a reality TV show on my campus.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I love that.
I'm not so sure how it would exemplify the brand that we want to put out there.
But it's authentic, Allison.
But the authenticity and thinking like a media company, like thinking like, what do prospective students like to watch? They watch things like that on Netflix, right? Like I want them to binge a show that takes place at my college on Netflix. Wouldn't that be the ultimate thing we could possibly do?
Yes. And the thing is, I wouldn't be surprised if that footage already exists on YouTube from your current students.
We just have to package it together to make it into.
That's right.
Build a confessional room. That would be. I mean, there's all kinds. We could do a dating show from here. We could do, there's all kinds.
That's right. That's right.
But again, probably wouldn't relate back to the, 4 or 5 pillars that we want to exemplify. One of the other things we were talking about on our short episode a lot was that choosing a college is often more of an emotional decision than a rational one.
It is.
So what are some ways as enrollment marketers and higher ed marketers we can leverage that insight, do you think?
Yeah, well, I think it's the rational brain that will get you into consideration set. So that will get you to a point where a student will apply.
Okay.
The final decision is going to come down to an emotional one. Yeah, I think schools need to think about how you can create a meaningful emotional connection that reinforces those brand pillars. So depending on your brand, that may look like different things. It could be that you have to create a review book that is bolder than anything your peers are doing. It may mean like storyboarding and scripting out your campus tour. It may mean that your reality show on your campus.
Please someone do that, because I know it's not going to happen here. Feel free to steal that idea, friends.
But no, I mean, I think that as you go through this, and as like a marketing team gets more into that storytelling mode, that just needs to be woven throughout all of the marketing material. So yes, you obviously need to send information on like what your graduation rates are and your tuition and everything like that. But telling, infusing that human element into that and understanding what that actually means to them on an emotional level. That can't get lost in the wave of all just the quantitative information that needs to be conveyed.
Yeah. So we have to attend to the rational, but know that the emotional is what's driving the real decision.
Correct.
Well, that's why campus visit is the most effective and I call it campus visit marketing, because that's the number one marketing opportunity. Well, outside of word of mouth is number one. Number two, I'll put campus visit. Everyone thinks it's like an admissions thing, but that is the number one marketing opportunity for a college. So if that's the number one driver of enrollment, typically that's not happening because of the facts that they learned on the tour.
I agree.
Right.
Speaking with another higher ed marketer who was talking about her number one marketing tactic over her years working at a university is like a food truck festival for prospective students, and just getting students another reason to come on campus, eat some food, meet with each other. And she said that was by far the highest performing event that she's ever done.
Wow. What an idea. That sounds so much more exciting than an open house.
It does, right?
It really does. And we use food trucks, and we're lucky enough to have a food truck actually at Sienna. The dining services has a food truck, which is fun. But a whole festival, I love it.
Yeah, it's great.
That's better than going, like you could go also, by the way, and spot. This is such a great metaphor, Louis. So the whole conversation we're having, you want to know why? Because a college or university could go and sponsor some local food truck festival that's already happening, right? You could have it sponsored, which would be putting your name on a third-party event that's happening, a third-party platform, or you could host your own food truck festival.
That's right. 100%.
There you go. So I loved that example. Any other stories or examples of brands in or out of higher ed that you feel like really do a great job creating those emotional connections that we can look to?
Yeah, the one school that I'd like to shout out, I love MIT's admissions blog. It is primarily student written. It's quirky and weird and simultaneously kind of all over the place because it's drawn from so many student authors, but it's very focused on the student experience and gives students and their parents a great idea of what life on campus looks like. And that it's very unfiltered. When you think of MIT students, you think of engineers, kind of quirky, and that comes through completely unfiltered. And it's one of my go-to examples of just a school allowing students to go in, be very authentic to themselves, and really show prospective students what it would be like to enroll there.
Yeah, I really think that the best thing we can do at colleges and universities is put the students out there and don't get in their way. I mean, I think that we're really the people who get in the way of the authenticity, even though we might aspire to be really authentic. We're often the ones who are the barrier to it.
Well, what's the adage? Higher ed marketing is 60-year-olds telling 30-year-olds how to market to 16-year-olds.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I've never felt luckier to have the boss I have, because my boss will say, the more I don't like it, the more I don't think it's right, the more I know it's right. So at least when you can get the head of the marketing organization, the final decision maker, understanding that they're not the audience, and if makes them feel a little uncomfortable or a lot uncomfortable, then you're probably spot on for the audience you're actually trying to resonate with. So everyone needs that kind of boss. I've never been more grateful than after hearing that statement you just made.
That's great.
Well, Louis, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your invaluable insights. You're my first person to be on the podcast 2 times. How's that?
Oh, great. Fantastic. Lucky me.
So you get that award. Where can our listeners connect with you or learn more about Electric Kite?
Yes, I'm a partner at Electric Kite. We're a creative digital marketing agency that helps colleges and universities stand out and tell their stories. You can see our work at electrickite.com. You can sign up for our newsletter there. Also, our higher ed digital magazine, voltedu.com. Also, look me up on LinkedIn. I'd be happy to connect with all your followers, Allison.
Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe to the application so you never miss an episode. Until next time, keep innovating in your marketing strategies and stay connected with your audience.
The application is part of the Enrollify podcast network. If you like this podcast, chances are you'll like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing by the month, and we've got a plethora of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed tech shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional. Our shows help higher ed marketers and admissions professionals find their next big idea. And they feature a selection of the industry's best as your hosts. Learn from Jamie Hunt, Seth Odell, Day Kibbolds, Jeremy Tiers, and so many other of your favorite higher ed leaders. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the leading AI-powered all-in-one student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.